So at a very young age, I started using marijuana and alcohol. And I started to embrace that identity. And that's when, my life just completely was out of control. And I was in class one night and I hear some guys talking about an opening on a hotshot crew. And I'm thinking to myself, I have my certs, I can do that job. I need this. I can't put into words how that moment in my life puts such a trajectory into the man I am today. After 2.5 years of fighting fire, my life was back on track and I left drugs in the past. June 30th, 2013, we'd be called to a fire in Yarnell, and it was a relatively small fire. My superintendent captain are standing right there, and they go, "Hey, Brennan, you want to be the lookout today?" I said, "Of course, Soup, I'd love to." I'm watching the fire, and the fire's moving completely away from us. It's going north, and we're on the south end of this fire. And so I'm relaying stuff back to my superintendent, and he's like, "Yeah, we're seeing similar things up here, and just keep us informed." And around that afternoon, late afternoon, we get a weather event update, and it's saying that there's this storm coming in from the north, and it's gonna bring winds of 50 to 60 miles an hour, and it's gonna turn this fire around. So instead of going north, it's gonna head south. Over the next few minutes, it starts really picking up, moving south towards us, and I'm closer to the fire than my crew. So this fire now is turned around and it's pushing towards town, and we don't have time. And this fire is starting to burn homes, and I'm watching it continue to progress to where they're at. And it's moving fast. The only way I can describe it is it just kind of skipped with the wind. And so we pull out. We pull everybody out of that area, and they start pulling everyone off the fire line because this weather event has come in a lot sooner than they had suspected, and there was another one behind it pushing it. And we get back into town, and I'm kind of wondering, hey, where my brother's at, and I'm thinking to myself, it's kind of getting a little hectic, stay off the radio. They've got plenty of experience, they're all together, they know what they're doing. And I start hearing calls over the radio that they're trying to get water dropped. And then I hear my superintendent over the radio say that they're getting ready to deploy their fire shelters. And I'm thinking, what's happened? And we're trying to find a way into where they're at. And we can't find a way in. There's just too much fire on the ground. There's no road in. So they get a helicopter up, and they've got a paramedic on board, and you can hear over the radio, "Hey, I've got eyes on the crew." You can see their shelters, and so they find a spot to land the helicopter, and I can only imagine from his account, he's hiking down, and I hear over the radio, a few minutes later, he says, I've got 19 confirmed. And it hit me that they had just passed away. That this fire had just taken their life. And everything that had led to the man I am today was gone. I didn't really have a strong family growing up. They did the best they could, but those men had defined me as a father, me as a community member, and continually tried to help me rebuild my relationship with God. And I had lost it all in the blink of an eye. It would be months of shock. Funerals, memorials. After the tragedy, I didn't turn back to heroin, but I turned to the bottle. Throughout the day, I couldn't escape the reality of what happened. And when I went to bed, my mind was haunted by the things I had seen and experienced. And I started to drink really heavy. My life was, I can't put it was living hell. Everywhere I went, there I was sitting in the mirror wondering, why didn't I die that day? You know, and it took me a while to get honest with myself. And I just started praying and crying. I'm like, God, I can't live like this anymore. And I never wanted to ever question why that day happened. But I do want to know, can you remove this from my life? Because I can't do it on my own. So after hitting rock bottom and having these moments of contemplating suicide, I found myself in counseling. And I thought I knew what recovery was, but I had no clue. I had no clue what my relationship with Christ looked like. I had no clue what recovery looked like. But I found a brotherhood in that meeting again, and it changed my life. I had men again that were willing to rally alongside me and walk alongside me and lead me to a deeper relationship with Christ that healed pain and filled a void that I never could fill with anything else. And that was only His love, only His forgiveness, and only His hope and purpose for my future that puts me here today.
Can we welcome Brendan McDonough? And I also just want to welcome all of you here today, whether you're in this room or you're joining us online. We're so glad that you found us, or someone brought you or dragged you against your will, or maybe some of you who serve in fire service or EMT in somewhere. Anyone in fire service or EMT that's here, can we also thank them? Yep. Thank you for what you do. Very glad you're here. It's gonna be a powerful morning. And I know as we get to dive into Brendan's story, I know that one of the things he wants you to think about is not just what happened in his story, but what's happening in your story. Even right now, even today, even with whatever's going on, whatever you brought into this room or whatever you're walking through, wherever you're watching from, to be thinking about, because God has a word for you today as well. We've been in the series on faith and mental health. And as we begin to brainstorm about how to talk about experiences that are traumatic or involve loss or loneliness or even addiction, Brendan's story came to mind. And of course, I had read and heard the story, as many people around the world knew your story from years ago. But it wasn't until a couple of months ago that we realized we could just invite you up and let you tell it to our community. So we're so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
And I imagine, well, actually, I can't imagine. Let me take that back. I cannot even imagine all the different emotions that must go through your mind and your heart as you were even listening to your own words tell that story again. It's going to be 10 years later this year. So I would love just to hear you talk a little bit about what happened in the days, weeks, even months after that tragedy, and how you began to cope with that loss.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me, and just really glad to be here. You know, watching that video, it allows me to take a step back in time, and it allows me to see the pain, but I'm not 2 feet in it anymore. And so, really after that tragedy, I had this insurmountable support from all over the country, within the wildfire community, within my community, nationally, people praying. And I'd never felt so alone in my life. And all the things that I was experiencing, the depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, the suicidal ideation, the things that I had witnessed, I just continued to try and stuff down, because on the outside, everyone's like, oh, he's a hero. Oh, God has something so special planned for you. Just wait. And I had to present myself prim and proper and very, professional and very firefighter-ish, right? That's what you think, right? When they show up, they're not showing up to run away, they're showing up to put it out, to save a life, to save property, to protect people. And so that was the idea image that I produced, and it was a mask. And on the inside, I was just dying. I didn't comprehend. I didn't know how to even say, hey, I'm hurt. You know, you just drink water and be quiet and just keep moving.
Yeah.
You know, and it took such a heavy toll on me and my relationship with my daughter. And I remember my mom told me, you know, she's like, you're a shell of my son. And it hurt, but it was so true.
Goodness. I think very few of us probably can relate to the story itself of what you walked through, but I can just name, and I'll just go ahead and be vulnerable. Like, I can certainly relate to that idea of feeling like the pressure to put on something.
Yeah.
And we all know the experience of walking through life where what's happening inside is not what people are seeing on the outside. And that can happen whether you're a teenager walking through stuff in your school, whether you're a 90-year-old trying to process something that's going on in your life. Like, it can happen at any age, stage. Yeah. So when was it for you, given all that's happened and all the attention, and within a couple of years, there's a movie being produced. And by the way, what did it feel like to have a movie made about your life? Was that like a moment or something?
Yeah, it was
you and Miles hanging out. Like, what is that all about?
Like, who's seen Top Gun 2, right? Yeah.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Right?
Do we have a picture of those guys? Do we have a? There we are.
There we go.
There we are.
Yeah, come on.
He would not play me in a movie, so I'm really grateful that he was able to play you in a movie. Thank you so much. But
yeah.
So you're going through this, but this is all happening within the months.
Yeah.
And you're still inside having all that. So when did you realize, wow, I'm actually having, mental health challenges? Like, I'm actually struggling. I'm not just processing, I'm struggling.
Yeah. I chuckle because hindsight's beautiful. And but that whole denial thing, right? It's not the only thing. It's not just a river, right? It's real. And I knew I was struggling initially. I knew I had some issues going on. But as far as the depth and complexity of how this trauma, this loss has affected me, this unique community within the wildfire community, this country, our community of Prescott, and this tragedy was so close to home, there was no time either, to be honest. It was 9 months of funerals, memorials, back-to-back interviews, doing fundraisers. Like, I didn't have time to be able to breathe, to even be able to look at it. And so it was probably 6 to 9 months until I realized, how bad my depression was, how bad my anxiety was, how bad the panic attacks, and struggling with alcohol and struggling with suicidal ideation and just everything that comes with it, that it put this insurmountable about a weight of pressure on me that I just collapsed. I couldn't do it. I couldn't live like that.
Oh my goodness. We've been, and you know this, and you'll get to share a few verses in a moment. When we first started talking with Brendan about today, and we said, well, we're reading through the life of this prophet in the Bible named Elijah, because Elijah had this emotional and mental breakdown. And if you've been part of the series, we've been living kind of in his story. And he has this moment, again, this is in the Bible, right? This is in God's word. He has this moment where he hits rock bottom. He says, I've had enough, Lord, take my life. Do you want to read those verses? Because I know you went back through and read them, and they just struck you in a personal way. And I'd love for you to share what you shared with me about kind of what came to mind when you were reading the scripture.
What's so cool is like the Bible is made for us, individually. And so I had to read it a few times, and then finally it was like, smack, and I'm like, there it is. So as I look through this, it says, Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he laid down and slept under the broom tree, but as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, get up and eat. He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel came again and touched him and said, "Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead of you will be too much for you." So he got up and drank and ate, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Then he came to a cave where he spent the night. And what popped in my head was, this has got to be 7 years now ago. Me and my daughter's mom were split, and I was driving her to go see her mom. And it's about an hour drive, and my daughter's in the back, and it's like a summer day, and she's passed out, and she's just sweating and sleeping.
She's like 3 years old or so? Yeah.
3 years old. And so we pull up to this meeting spot, and my daughter just can't wait to get out of this car seat, and this excitement's in her face, and there's just all this joy that she has, and she gets out, and I give her a hug, and she's like just crawling to go. And she gets in the car with her mom, and I've got an hour drive back, and all I can think about is like, man, she was so ready to get away from me. Like, how difficult must it be for her to have a father that just isn't present? Because mentally, I'm just not there. I legitimately couldn't be there for her. And as I'm driving home, I start to think of like my worth, and I'm not worthy of being a dad, and I'm not worthy of having this little girl's love, and she deserves better. And if I can't give her better, then I'm better not here. And I remember looking off in the distance, and I see smoke. And so then there goes that trigger. Now I'm thinking about Yarnell, and I'm processing that loss and that grief. And I'm sitting here in my truck driving, and I just can't seem to stop that snowball. Yeah. Like, it's been put in place, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's building steam, and I'm having a hard time breathing, and I can't control what images are popping up in my head. And finally I pull over the truck, and I grab the gun out of the center console, and I put it to my head, and I'm screaming.
Like a real gun.
Pull it. Just pull the trigger. I can't live like this anymore. And as funny as it is, this Katy Perry song comes on, right?
It's always Katy Perry that comes on, isn't it?
Yeah. And like, I'm seconds away from what so many of us have felt and tried escaping in one way or another, right? Maybe it's not a gun. Maybe it's overworking. Maybe it's overeating. Maybe it's overspending. Maybe it's gambling. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's whatever it is, something to escape me. I don't like me. And I see this image of my daughter, and it's her dancing in the living room, and she's got balloons tied to her feet, and she's gonna trip for sure. And I'm like, no, don't do that. But I'm like, whatever, this is gonna be awesome. And I come to, and the gun's in my lap, and I'm thinking about, that could have been it. Like, every waking part of my body just said, God, take me. Something. This gun, take me. This alcohol, take me. I am done. I have no more life to give. In that moment, God said, you're not. Let me show you how to give your life. When we sit there and take my life versus give my life, I'm done. I can't do anymore. And give my life is giving my life to a higher purpose, giving our life to Christ and his sacrifice of dying on the cross for our sins and then being born again. And in that moment, as messed up as everything was in my life, I knew I was gonna be okay.
Wow.
And a week later, God would put a counselor who was a believer in my life, who helped me begin to process and unpack this weight and pressure that I thought I was strong enough for.
And I want to take a quick time out for everybody listening right now and just point out how the proximity, like you feel like you're at your lowest moment, it's at the end, you literally have a gun in your car, you're ready to pull the trigger. And whether you've been in that place actually or even just mentally and emotionally, and it was in that moment that God met you.
Yeah.
And I think so often, especially in churches, we have this idea, this notion somehow that it's when we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get ourselves together and make everyone think we're doing great, that's when we'll meet God. But no, it's actually when you kind of hit rock bottom, you actually find something that's sturdy.
Yeah.
And you named it, and I just want to have you say a little more, that it was Christ, it was Jesus, it was this man that you met in that moment. So just talk a little bit about, how you met Jesus, kind of who led you there, and what Jesus has meant to you along the way in this story of recovery from that moment.
Yeah, and so, I grew up in church, and then obviously if you watch the movie, definitely ran away from that. And there was this pastor, this youth pastor that I caused a lot of issues for in high school. He was
One of those guys, were you?
Yeah. You never want to hear a youth pastor sit there and say man, I wish that kid wouldn't show up. He never said it to me, but his face said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But after the tragedy, he kept asking to meet with me. And I'm like, man, I'm not trying to meet with this square dude, that keeps wanting to grab coffee and talk about feelings and emotions. And
I get that a lot too, I know.
Yeah.
I don't want to meet with that guy either.
All right, man, we'll go to Chipotle. Let's get some Chipotle and I'll get double meat and, And
he was buying, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, there you go, so.
And my intention in that moment was to scare him away.
Wow.
Let me give this man enough fear so that he just leaves me alone and he gives me exactly what I want to hear. I want to hear the hellfire and brimstone so I can sit there and say, that's not the God I want to be a part of. And I'm telling him all these things, these experiences, and I'm telling him how I'm drinking too much and getting in fights and all this, and he's just sitting there and he's eating his food and he just looks at me and he goes, well, that was stupid. And I'm like, nah, give me more. And so then he starts talking about this love, this unconditional love. I barely knew my dad. Mom struggled with mental health, addiction. It was conditional. He's telling me about this love and this forgiveness of the things that I can't even forgive myself for. And this God-sized hole I'm looking at. And he says, he can fill that, Brennan. It's your choice. He's giving you the will to choose him. And he invited me to this recovery group, and he was smart. He bait and switched me. He's like, hey man, you're so strong and you're so great. You have so much to offer people. And I'm putting on that heroic face of yep, serve others, put everyone else first. And he's like, I want you to come to this Wednesday night Bible study. So I get there, and I'm hearing these men share about their rock bottom, and some of them are in treatment, and some of them have shoes on from the Goodwill because they were donated to them, and they have nothing, but they have this joy. The outside looking in for me, I got an actor that's playing me that I look better than, right? I got a house, I got a truck, I got a wife, I have kids, I have everything physically that you think would be great to have, and I am dying. I want what they have. I desperately want to have a smile when they're at their rock bottom. And it was only because of the men around them in that relationship with Christ that it could be had. And so me being me, I didn't ask anybody. I didn't hey, I want that, right? I was afraid. And so I get in my truck and I start praying to God, and I said, God, I know you're real. I don't know what you're like, but take this. Take this alcohol, take this depression, take this anxiety, take all of it, because I don't want to die just yet.
And did he?
Amen, he did.
Yeah.
And
Say more about how God answered that prayer, because I know he did.
yeah, that very next day, it's St. Patrick's Day. My dad's from South Boston. My grandfather's from Ireland. Like, we drink whiskey, right?
Okay, gotcha.
And I go out and I'm going through dinner and I don't take the first drink. I don't take the second drink. And by the fourth one, the waiter's like, hey, are you sick? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I have something really important the next morning. And I said, I can't drink. And I remember I got through the whole dinner without having a drink. And I get in my truck and I just break down because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to use something to feel normal. I didn't have to use something to go to something to feel like I'm loved. It was right there. It was right there in that moment. And someone kept telling me, Brennan, hold fast to Christ. Hold fast to the things that aren't gonna fail you in life. And I know if anything that I know in my life is true, that he will never fail you. I could give you nothing else factual, but I can give you that. I can give you that Christ will not fail you. And that next morning I was meeting with Bob, the same pastor, and we had breakfast. And I shared that with him and his just excitement and joy of like that little victory that has gotten me to almost 6 years clean today.
Wow. Yeah. One of our mantras, and we believe this around here, if you're new to our community, this is something that's at the core of who we are, and we say it all the time, that we believe Jesus can change everything for anyone. We mean all of that everything, and we mean all that anyone. And I would love for you just to reflect, because somebody out here or somebody watching right now has something inside for some reason. It could be whatever part of their story or their pain where they go, yeah, but maybe not everything for me.
Yeah.
And so what would you want to say to someone who feels too washed up, too messed up, too broken down, too beat up? What would your word to them? And if that's you, I want you just to open your ears for a moment, would you?
In the Bible, it says, my grace is enough, and in weakness, my power is made perfect. And I was you. I felt unworthy of love, compassion, forgiveness. I spent years blaming myself for their death, trying to control something that I can't control. And what I would tell you is that it takes courage to say, I'm not okay. It takes faith, but it also takes curiosity to ask those questions of yourself. God, what do I need to surrender to you? Wow. Show me. Please show me what you want me to surrender, because I can't do it alone. And if you're in that moment, like I said, there's not much I can tell you that's factual, but I can tell you that God will show up.
God will show up.
God will show up every time you need him, in every waking moment. And he will give us the energy, the life, the ability, the love, the compassion, the wisdom, and so much more, and the amazing people around us to get through this. You have a church today that is having this conversation, not to say, hey, let's show Brennan's conversation. No, to bring that out of you, to say, hey, if this is something you're hurting with, if this is a pain you have, let us help you.
Yeah.
Let us be there for you. Let us be a brother and sister.
Yeah.
Let us walk with you. Just as Jesus wants to walk with us.
And I know you've made this kind of your life mission.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit. Say a little bit about just what you've been doing and the recovery work and the programs you started, a little bit about your family today, just what God has done and how you're able to, and even the lives you're seeing, because I think you do have more facts than you name, because you've seen some lives being transformed through the power of the gospel, even in other rock bottom moments for people.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? What's been going on? What have you been working on?
God said, go open a Christian treatment center. And I said, man, I'm a knuckle drug and hotshot. How am I supposed to do that? And he put every person in place. And 9 months later, we opened. We've been open for 4.5 years. I've seen lives radically changed because of their relationship with Christ. And I've seen non-believers become believers. I've seen them turn their life over. I've watched my family grow, married with 3 children. I watched my children want a relationship with Christ. I've watched it deepen, and they see it.
Yeah.
Because what's inward is shared outward.
Yeah.
Just like Bob, I just want to relentlessly pursue those who are struggling and share this message with them. Because we don't have to live like that anymore. You're not alone. You're not too broken. That's the perfect place Christ wants to be, and he says it time and time and over again. The broken, the weary, the sick. That's who I came for. And it's for us to just accept that and know it's true. And it's just been a beautiful journey. It really has, and I'm so thankful that I figured this out at a young age so that I get to spend the rest of my life just pursuing him and others.
Yeah. Can we thank Brendan for being here? And I want to say, we've had a couple of Zoom calls and then, less than 24 hours of getting to know each other, but I just have such a respect for you. I feel like God has put favor on your life. And we're gonna be praying for you and cheering for you and realizing that you're doing what the church does, which is reach and meet people in the rock bottom, basement, hell holes of life.
Yeah.
And letting the light come through.
Amen.
And I know God's gonna bless the work that you do, and we're just so grateful for you to be here with us, and I'm just so grateful for your story and the way it's impacted even my life in the last day and a half, so thank you. So can we thank him again for being here? I love you.
Love you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you guys.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
Thank you. You can have a seat. Before we close, I want to go back to where I started with you. And I'll have to tell you, I've had a chance to watch that movie, Only the Brave. I encourage you to take some time and do that. It's a powerful film. And I've had a chance now to sit with Brendan and hear his story. And we've broken bread. Well, we broke pizza and French fries, but we broke bread together. And I got to tell you, his heart today is not that you would walk away thinking, wow, what a powerful story. His heart today is that you walk away thinking, God, what do you have to say to my story? Where do you want to break into my rock bottom? Where do you want to break into the strongholds the enemy has in my life, where I need to find freedom and truth and hope and love? Because here's the thing, today is not about saying, wow, God did something over there that was powerful. Today is about realizing God can do that in your life, or in your work, or in your marriage, or in your family, or in your pain, or in your trauma, or in your depression, or in the cave you find yourself in. So I just want to invite you right now, if you just bow your heads and close your eyes for just a moment. We got a couple moments before our service is done, and if you're a guest here today or someone brought you here today and you're sort of like, I don't know about the religious part of this or the faith thing or this guy Jesus, that's okay. Here's what I'll tell you. A guy like Brendan is here to let you know that he's for real, but you have to try it. In fact, one of the most courageous things you can do with your life right now is just try faith and not fear. And so with all the eyes closed and heads bowed, if you feel like today is a day for you to say yes to Jesus or to take a step of faith towards him, I want to encourage you to do that right now. Don't wait, don't think much more about it. Just you can say, Jesus, I want to say yes to you, or I want to take a step towards you. Or maybe it's much more raw. Maybe like Brendan in that truck, you feel like I'm done. I'm done trying to fix this or change that or be a certain kind of person. And you can tell him that, because friends, when you tell him that, that's where he meets you. And that's where his life can transform your life. So if you need that transformation and you want to say yes to him with all eyes closed, if you would just do me this quick favor, if you would just raise your hand for a moment, because I want this to be a real moment for you, and say, I'm saying yes to Jesus. Amen, amen, amen. I gotta tell you, your life's turning around even in this moment. And if that's you today, I wanna ask you before you go, if you would be willing to come over to the side of the room where that sign says, I said yes, or let us know in the chat online. Don't leave, fill out the connect card, check the box that says, I made a decision for Jesus. Don't leave, because like Brendan said, you can't do this road alone. I promise you, I've tried, Brendan tried, you've tried. You can't do it alone. And with all our eyes closed, I just wanna also challenge you. Some of you, maybe you've been a believer for a long time, but you know you've been battling something you're in over your head. You can't beat that alone. I wanna challenge you before you go to pull out the connect card or to reach out online. And by the way, you can just text the word reach out to 97000 anytime and we'll follow up with you. But I wanna challenge you to reach out and get into a group. Brennan's story wasn't about flying solo and figuring this out by himself. He stepped into community where he could be loved and embraced, and there's life groups here, there's recovery groups here. There's a group called Alpha. If you're not even sure, but this whole faith thing is real, that's a group for you, but don't walk this alone. So I'm also gonna do this. I don't normally do this, but with all the eyes closed, if you wanna commit today to stepping into community in some practical way, would you just raise your hand and make a moment? Hey, I'm gonna take a step towards community today. Would you just raise your hand and let me know? Yep, yes, you need that, yes. Tell that person, sign up for that group, text, reach out. Your life matters too much to not take a step today. Jesus, we're so grateful for the work that you do, for the pits you bring us out of. We're so grateful there's nothing we can do to make us unworthy of your love. There's nowhere we can run or hide to make us not findable by you. There is nothing we can do that can condemn us when we stand before the cross where you poured out your life for us. And so Jesus, I'm so grateful for this amazing reminder, not of the power of fire and death, but the power of the cross and new life. May that transform us and our community today. May we be a light to those around us and a reminder that there's always hope. Jesus, we are grateful for you, and we pray this in your name. And everybody said, amen.